I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story, and welcome to Friday. Hey, tonight we're once again stepping into the future with a fascinating look at the advances in fighting something that will impact all of us in some way: cancer. An amazing amount of research and progress is being made in the fight against cancer right here in Portland at the Knight Cancer Institute at Oregon Health and Sciences University. How are they doing it, and what role is artificial intelligence playing? That, my friend, is our big story tonight. When we talk about something like cancer, I know it can be scary. I'll bet every one of you knows somebody who has had it in the past or will have it. Maybe it's even you. But as our story last night reminded us, progress is being made by brilliant researchers like Dr. Brian Druker and his team here in Portland. And there are hopeful examples. Here's an email that came in after the show from Duncan and Molly. He wrote, "For a decade, my wife Molly has benefited from the science of Dr. Druker and his team for the treatment of her leukemia. Your interview was personal for us. The added years of grandkids and the joys of life. How do you thank someone for the gift of time?" Great point. As I mentioned, the work is being done by Dr. Druker and the team at the Knight Cancer Institute. It's part of Oregon Health and Sciences University. The institute has a $1 billion endowment. Half of that paid for by Nike founder Phil Knight and his wife Penny. The other half came from taxpayers and a whole lot of companies who pitched in. I got a chance to interview Dr. Druker recently, and I asked him about that fund.
Well, thanks, Pat. Let me start by thanking the 10,000 people who made this possible by donating and matching Phil and Penny Knight $500 million to make $1 billion to invest in cancer research. And that's a huge responsibility, and we've taken that seriously. And we're breaking new barriers, new boundaries in what we call precision oncology, which is matching patients with the right treatment and early detection of cancer so we can identify cancer at its early and most curable stages. And we're making significant advances in both those areas as we promised.
Okay, and we'll get to that in a sec. But first, I think some folks at home may wonder, what do you do with $1 billion? I mean, does that go into an investment account, or what do you do with that?
Well, first of all, it's being invested over a decade, so it's not like there's a pile of gold sitting somewhere. But we put about $250 million into an endowment that will give off operating revenue year after year over a decade. So we're sustainable. But mostly what we put that into has been people and programs. $200 million came from the state of Oregon and Bonding Authority, and that built a building that now houses over 875 people who brought in the last decade over $1 billion in grant funding from external sources to the state of Oregon. But then we've recruited incredible talent, people to come and work on curing cancer here in Oregon. And that's been the best part of my job, is to bring that talent here and watch them create.
This is the Knight Cancer Institute Research Building. It's the place he's talking about, and it's where I conducted the interview with him. Dr. Druker also went on a recruiting binge, building a team that now numbers 1,500 people to play a role in some of the most advanced cancer research in the world. It's a big effort, and it brings pressure to show results. And I asked him for some of those results.
Well, a couple of big breakthroughs. Not only do we have the ability to target cancers, but we've also learned how to harness the power of the immune system. And although we weren't the center that discovered this, we certainly are using an enormous amount of immunotherapeutics. But an investigator working at the time in New York, I determined that when we develop cancer, our immune system, the cancer tells our immune system to put the brakes on. Don't go after that, just leave it alone. We've learned how to take the brakes off so the immune system says, hey, wait a second, that's a cancer, we better go kill it. And by reactivating the immune system to do its job to attack and kill cancer, we've had remarkably effective therapies. And the person who, one example that I give a lot of people is former President Jimmy Carter. He had metastatic melanoma to his brain. He's still alive, celebrating his 100th birthday over 5 years after what should have been a fatal diagnosis in less than 6 months to a year. Those are the sorts of treatments. And now what we're doing is we're using our smart analytics, also trying to figure out what's the immune system doing, and can we help trigger the immune system in better ways and combine them with these targeted therapies to get even better outcomes.
And I know you're talking at a 10,000 foot level, and I appreciate that, but is there, similar to the earlier question, a simple way you can explain how you're able to tell that the cancer is turning off the immune system and you tell the immune system, go get it? It's okay if it's too complicated.
No, basically what we do is we can actually look at the state of an immune cell. And if we do some very sophisticated profiling, we can determine whether it's in what we call a resting or inactive state or an activated state. And we can actually look at the switch between those two states and determine, okay, those immune cells are off, we treat, they've turned on, and they're doing their job.
He also points to artificial intelligence as a key tool now. It allows researchers to study the DNA sequences that make up our human genes, and that helps them to find clues to what's happening with the cancers. It's an exciting field that Dr. Druker and the Knight Cancer Institute are embracing. You've sort of already been talking about it, but what's the future? Where do things go from here?
Well, they go a couple of places. I still think we can do better at matching patients with the right treatments. And we're working quite a bit with any number of companies in the artificial intelligence realm, and we're actually hiring a large group, thanks to philanthropy, to establish what we call a Center for Biomedical Data Science in collaboration with our colleagues at the University of Oregon. Because we still think that there's answers that cancer could give us if we knew how to analyze the data better. So we can generate massive amounts of data, but I can sit down with the data and say, I think this is what we need to do, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. Imagine if we had a computer that could tell us all the different algorithms that I can't see, and could say, why don't you try this? And maybe it'll work better. So if you combine a computer with my brain and other really bright people, we think we can do even better. But at the same time, we're also collaborating again with numbers of artificial intelligence companies, looking at how does cancer go from early, benign, gross, to a lethal malignancy. What does that trajectory look like? And how can we intervene? And I'll give you an example we're doing in prostate cancer. We have 10,000 prostate cancer biopsies from our collaborators in the United Kingdom with clinical follow-up. If we ask a pathologist, the people that read these biopsies, to grade those 10,000 prostate cancers, it would take them years to look at those 10,000. We can train a computer to look at a type of early stage prostate cancer, train it, and then it can go through those 10,000 samples in minutes. Wow. Then we can go back and train it on a slightly more advanced stage. And after we've trained it, it can go back and look for that in minutes. So now, instead of requiring years to do these analytics, it's days to minutes. And now we can start to say, okay, correlate that with the outcome and tell us which men you predict are going to progress and which men we could just leave alone. Those are the sorts of things that we're unlocking with these powerful analytical tools that we never had before.
I have to say, I found that really fascinating. We hear so much about the dangers of artificial intelligence, but this is a field where it clearly seems to have benefits for all of us. Dr. Druker says it's incredible the way AI allows researchers like him to leap forward with new discoveries.
Well, let me give you an example. When I first started out in the lab, this was a long time ago, if I sequenced one gene in the human genome, 1 out of 30,000 genes, that was a 10-week project, and it was an amazing accomplishment. 1 gene out of 30,000. 2001, the first human genome, all 30,000 genes was sequenced at a cost of about $100 million. About 10 years ago, you could sequence the entire human genome for $10,000. Now, I can take a tumor and I can sequence each individual cell, tens of thousands of cells, their entire genome, and with barcoding, I can identify each individual cell in that cancer.
Wow.
So now 30,000 cells, 30,000 genes, that's massive amounts of data from one cancer.
And is that like from a cell being fed into a computer?
Yes.
Because you're not looking at it under a microscope.
No, it's being fed into a machine and the machine spits out all that data. Now our job is to try to analyze it and make sense of it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, wow is, and even for somebody like me to look at this technology, it's way beyond science fiction.
And since the information is now converted into data, it can easily be shared with other researchers around the world. It almost sounds like with AI, the only limit is your imagination for the way it can be used.
It's imagination and data. You need a ton of data, and we're collaborating with any number of people around the world to ensure we have enough data to train the models and then help us design the experiments that are going to make a big difference for people.
And as you were saying that, I was thinking, I imagine the data generally has been out there, but maybe kept in one university or lab, or it's not been centralized.
And I think what everybody realizes that by collaborating, by combining that data, we're going to solve this problem so much faster. Now, one of the things we did almost a decade ago in another type of leukemia, of lethal leukemia called acute myeloid leukemia, is with support from Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, we collaborated with about 12 to 15 different centers around the country, about 10 or 11 drug companies, and we profiled over 1,000 patient samples in incredible depth, and we've made all that data public. So now if somebody says, is my favorite gene or pathway activated, they can go search that in our database, and instead of having to collect hundreds of samples over years, they can sit down at a computer console and do that experiment.
Wow. Wow. It's fascinating and exciting to think about, I think.
It's truly exciting times for cancer research.
Will there ever be a time where cancer is fully defeated?
You know, I think, in my view, what I want to think about with cancer is that it's no longer feared. I don't think we'll ever eliminate cancer. Much like, I used to say, I used analogies to infectious disease. I've stopped using them because when COVID came along, I was like, whoa. But before COVID, you'd think about infections at what antibiotic do I need? Oh, it's a mild cold, it'll run its course. With cancer, I want to get us to the point where when you hear you've got cancer, your mind is numb. I want it to be, you've got cancer, okay, well, what do I need to do to get on with my life? It's not a big deal. For my patients who take Gleevec, that's the way it is for them. And that's what I want for many, many others. But ultimately, I want to make sure we're detecting it early when it's highly curable. And also we need to think about prevention, where we actually, if you don't get cancer, that's always going to be better.
How's that for a glimpse to the future? We also wanted to share some more of your feedback to part one of my interview with Dr. Druker that was on last night. We love this one from Jill. Normally I have to curse at you at least twice during an episode. Not tonight. Fascinating, encouraging, inspiring story and reporting providing good news for all who are touched by cancer. And as you said in your opening, that's all of us. So extremely proud to be from Oregon with this kind of innovation happening here. And Lucille wrote to us, thank you for airing this story on such an inspiring doctor and his research. My sister-in-law was diagnosed with leukemia at age 50. Today, she's a spunky 83-year-old thanks to Dr. Druker and his Gleevec. And we'll end on this one from Will. My takeaway, what an absolutely inspirational person Dr. Druker is. In a me, me, me society, he is clearly about the we. Bless Dr. Druker. Our society would benefit greatly from more like him. Coming up next on the story, environmental reporter Cale Williams tells us about a new community solar project in Northeast Portland. The power itself does not go to specific homes, but folks in one neighborhood will see big discounts on their power bills. How it all works when the story returns. Despite solar energy being around for quite some time, plenty of people have still not been able to tap into the renewable energy for a variety of reasons. But that is changing in Northeast Portland with the city's newest and largest community solar project. And it'll soon be bringing the solar benefits to those traditionally left out. Environmental reporter Cale Williams shows us this solar solution in our own backyard.
In Northeast Portland,
this land is owned by the Port of Portland, and it hosts a 1 megawatt community solar array.
right next to the airport.
This particular project will be serving 150 households.
A new kind of energy is taking shape.
Yeah.
That's Evan Ramsey, Director of Renewables for the Bonneville Environmental Foundation. And he said this project, called PDX Community Solar, is breaking down barriers.
Well, traditionally, if somebody wanted to be solar powered, they would have to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to put panels on their own home.
Usually, they'd have to own their own home too. And they'd have to be in a spot with good exposure to the sun.
With community solar, you can subscribe to a project without having to front the upfront capital.
Once it's completed, the roughly 2,200 solar panels here will provide up to 1 megawatt of electricity. That's enough to power about 200 homes. But the power produced here won't flow directly into nearby residences. Instead, it'll flow into the grid, generating credits that will lower the bills of 150 residents in the Coley neighborhood.
This is a great project, I think.
Betsy Kaufman is with Energy Trust of Oregon.
The solar energy does not get delivered to their homes, but the financial benefits of the solar is delivered to their electric bill.
Back in 2016, the legislature passed a bill requiring the state to get 160 megawatts of community solar producing power across the state.
So yeah, this is really an amazing thing to see.
Energy Trust has been one of the groups working to make sure that happens.
Currently, there are 25 community solar projects that are operating, serving about 4,000 people in Oregon. And in 2025, we're expecting an additional 20 to come online.
And the savings on those utility bills, they're very real.
For people with lower incomes, it's about 40% on their electric bills.
For an average ratepayer in the Cully neighborhood, that means an annual discount of $350 to $400.
If a low-income family could save up to $400 per year on their electricity bills, that would really make the world of difference.
Santila Hawley is with Verde,
Yes.
a nonprofit that works on environmental justice issues.
The Cully neighborhood is one of the most racially and ethnically diverse neighborhoods in Portland, and also has a really large low-income population as well.
And it's just those types of folks who are often on the front lines of extreme weather.
These are the types of people who typically get hit the hardest by environmental harm.
The savings are big enough that some people thought it was too good to be true.
There were some community members who didn't really trust it, who thought that, it was a scam because they could see so much savings on their electricity bill.
So having a group like Verde, which has been working in Cully for years, was crucial.
So that's why it was really important for us to meet face to face with our community members and people in the Cully neighborhood to let them know, like, hey, this is real, it's amazing, and it's something that can happen and should happen.
Community solar does more than just lower the bills of Cully residents, though.
Community solar is a real powerful, scalable tool to achieve, both environmental outcomes, but also some social equity outcomes and address wealth inequality.
And for this project in particular, a local group called Leaders Become Legends provided workforce training to underserved members of the community, getting them on-the-job training in a field that is likely to see big growth in the coming years.
We've seen a lot of the workers here be very excited to work on a project of this scale in their community that benefits people that they relate to.
So with all those benefits, why don't we see fields of community solar panels popping up all over the place? That, Ramsey said, is a good question for lawmakers in Salem.
That really depends on some policy decisions that are made. Not every state has community solar in law. Not every utility is proactive in supporting these kinds of projects. And so how this scales up really depends on those policy decisions that are made.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
And Cale tells us that project cost around $4 million. It was primarily funded through the Portland Clean Energy Fund. That's the 1% tax on large businesses that voters approved back in 2018 to fund climate projects in the city. Regular viewers will probably remember that the fund ended up taking in a lot more money than originally expected. So it is good to see some of that money out the door and making a difference. Coming up on the story. Volunteers from all walks of life spilled into downtown Portland today as part of an effort to clean up the city's image. I know we cover a lot of the bad and negative downtown, so how about a little positivity when the story returns? What a great effort in downtown Portland today. Close to 1,000 volunteers took to the streets of downtown as part of an effort to get Portland back to where it once was. We Believe in Portland was started just over a year and a half ago. It's been growing ever since. A small army of volunteers made up of employees of nonprofits, companies, and city workers and leaders fanned out across the city, picking up whatever trash they could find along the curb or sidewalk. The group also included the mayor.
This is people who believe in Portland. They're coming together because they love this city. They want to do something tangible to help. And so look at this crowd. It's a huge crowd of people.
I think Portland's getting a bum rap, and it doesn't need to. This is a beautiful city, and it's nice to see everybody coming together to make an effort.
Portland is an amazing city. We want the world to know that. We want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of the recovery of downtown Portland.
Nice job, everybody. Bucket by bucket, piece by piece, the volunteers of We Believe in Portland hope to bring the Rose City its unique charm that many feel was lost during the pandemic. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember the story, our collective story? Well, that never ends. I'm going to be taking a few days off next week. I'm climbing Mount St. Helens tomorrow. And then my wife and I are celebrating our 30th anniversary. But you'll be in good hands with Evan Watson. And the team has some great stories planned for you. In the meantime, Timbers 360 is coming your way next. Have a great weekend.